When I say the word passion, what pops into your head? Romance? Maybe an activity that you really enjoy? Something that you would spend a lot of your own time on, even if it meant you weren't going to get compensation in return. For many, passion is something that we recognize, but we're not exactly sure how to find it. We don't know how to find our own passions. When we do find them, they can be relatively elusive. We're passionate about something today, and then the next, not so much. Sometimes a passion comes, sometimes a passion goes. Well, today I want to talk to you about how you can find your passion and the steps you can take to make sure that you're not going to fall into living a life where you're just avoiding the things that you care about or thinking that you're chasing a passion, even if it's something that you really aren't that passionate about. Passion can be something that's difficult to understand, and I want to talk to you a bit about the psychology of passion as well as my story with finding my passion. When I graduated high school in 2013, I was 17 years old, and I really had no idea who I was or what I wanted to be doing in life. I barely made it through high school because I wasn't putting in any effort, because I wasn't motivated. I was a straight D student, and they almost didn't let me graduate. When I looked around at my peers, I saw all these people who knew what they wanted to be doing. Some of them were going to very prestigious colleges. They already had their majors decided, and they were only half a year older than me for the most part. Some of them maybe a year older than me. And I thought to myself, how come I don't know where I want to be 5 or 10 years from now? How come I haven't decided who I am or what my identity is or what I want to be doing with my life at this stage in my life? And it wasn't until 6 or 7 years after high school that I really started to come into who I am now and who I realized that I wanted to be. But along that journey, during those years, I realized the very important process of finding out who you aren't is just as important as finding out who you are. Because once you find out who you aren't and who you aren't supposed to be, and maybe who you thought you were supposed to be isn't in alignment with who you are, then you can get a good grasp on who you are and really what you want to be doing with your life. So who did I think I was going to be at 17 years old? Who did I think I was going to be 5 years down the road? And what did I think I was passionate about at the time? Well, graduating high school, I thought I was going to be working in cybersecurity. I was always the kid growing up who was really good at computers, and my family would always tell me that. They would say, hey, you're really good at computers, and whenever they needed help with things, they would come to me, family, friends, anybody really. I did my senior project on cybersecurity, and I thought it was something that was really high tech at the time. It was kind of ahead of the curve, and I really wanted to be part of that new technology. So much so that I went to college to try and get an associate's degree in cybersecurity and realized very early on that I hated it, and that I wanted nothing to do with the field of cybersecurity as a profession in the future. And that was very hard for me because I went to college for something that I thought I really liked, that I thought I was passionate about, and then I realized that I didn't like it, and then I didn't actually know anything about the interest that I had. And in response to that, as a response to that, I didn't know who I was. I no longer had an identity. I no longer realized the kind of person I am because all this time and energy that I had been putting into something that I thought I was passionate about wasn't really something that I was passionate about, which led me to drop out of college after about a year and a half, almost to the 2-year mark, and start working in retail, just trying to get by for a few years. These few years when I was working in retail, I was just kind of floating around in terms of identity, and I wasn't really putting energy or thought into the process of figuring out who I was. In psychology, this is a state known as identity diffusion, where we kind of don't know who we are and we're not really interested in putting in energy to figure that out. That's exactly where I was. I was just burnt out from the college and high school experience, and I didn't even want to think about who I was. I was just like, I'm just going to work for a few years. I'm going to have some financial independence and freedom, and then maybe in the future I'll return to this. And this is, in my opinion, one of the worst states that you can be in kind of psychologically, because this is the most stagnant state where you're really just saying, I don't want to do anything related to growth or finding out who I am. This is just who I am right now, and I'm going to keep it as that and kind of keep grinding this wheel. For me, it was important to be in this state for a little bit of time because I was so burnt out from the college and high school experience. But what's really important is if you're in this state to realize that eventually you need to move into the next identity state, which is called identity moratorium. Identity moratorium is when you are still low on commitment when it comes to your identity. You're still not interested in deciding who you are right away, but you are interested and willing to explore different identities or different paths that you can take in life. So that's what I did for the next few years. I just kind of explored different possibilities and tried to see if any of them would lead to something that sounded like it would be interesting to me or drew out any passion in me. And we'll get back to passion here soon, I promise. because we're leading up to something here, but I really think that this identity moratorium stage, this stage of exploration, is so important because it's what really allows you to see who you are and, more importantly, who you aren't. During this stage, I tried quite a few different things. I considered working in hotel management because I have an uncle who works in high-end executive hotel management, and he could have taught me the ropes and given me an opportunity. I considered working as a locksmith because I knew somebody who was a locksmith apprentice. I considered continuing to stay in retail and maybe working as a manager someday. Essentially, I was just trying thing after thing after thing and deciding, is this for me? No. Does this draw any passion from me? No. And then eventually one day I stumbled onto the thing that really stuck out to me. I picked up a book about personality and psychology, and that kind of drew something out from me. It was hard to explain, but as soon as I read this book, the book Gifts Differing, which is a book on the Myers-Briggs type indicator, I realized that there was something there that really stuck out to me, and that was kind of what made me consider moving into the next stage of my life. After I read this book on personality and personality psychology, I started looking more into psychology as a whole, and I realized that something was there, that I was really interested in this topic. And that really stuck with me. After, 6 or 7 months, I realized, hey, I'm still interested in this. I'm still reading about these things, and it's been over half a year. And then after a year, I decided, you know what? I'm really interested in this personality thing. I'm going to go get certified as an MBTI Practitioner, which is like a 1-week course. It's not terribly difficult. Anyone can really go do it. There's no prerequisites. So I went and did that. And it was what happened there at that certification course that really instilled into me that this is what I wanted to be doing for the rest of my life, that I wanted to work with psychology as a whole. On the very last day of the course, on the way out of the classroom, the instructor, a woman, I won't say her name here, pulled me aside and she said, Chris, I can tell you're really passionate about this personality stuff. I can tell you're really passionate about this psychology stuff. And I think it's great that you've come here to do this certification. But the fact that you're so passionate about this makes me think that you could do really well with a degree in psychology, and maybe you should consider going back to college and getting a degree. And that was something that hit me like a hammer to the head that day. I was so blown away that this teacher saw this passion in me and saw it enough to stop me and tell me that, and told me that maybe I should consider going back to college because it was something that I was passionate about. And right there, I knew she was right. I was like, you're absolutely right. This is something that I want to pursue. This is it. And less than a week later, I was back in college. I signed up for the spring courses that had already started, and I started as a late entry, and I was back in college starting my psychology degree. So how does having a passion or working towards something that you're passionate about impact the kind of person you are and the way that you're going to be doing things? Well, for me, I went from being a straight D student who barely got through high school and the first year of college to being a straight A student the entirety of the way through my psychology bachelor's degree. I never got anything lower than an A. And for me, it was because I knew this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to be working with, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And once you find that one thing that clicks with you, you're going to see this huge change in who you are and how you approach the things that you want in life. You're going to be spending a lot of energy and dedicating a lot of energy, even if there's very little reward towards this thing. And the real takeaway that I want to give you when it comes to finding your passion, finding your identity, is that you need to be open to exploring and trying things that you wouldn't originally think could be your passion. You need to get into that identity moratorium stage. You need to say, this is something that I think that I might be interested in. Let me try it for a little bit. And even if I'm not interested in it, at least I can say that I tried. At least I can say that this is not the thing that I am passionate about. Because if you leave all those doors closed, you're never going to find your passion. So when you're out there looking for your passion, when you're trying to find out who you are, take some time to stop and think about, well, what are things that I haven't tried yet? What are things that I might be interested in? You have to really kind of self-reflect and think to yourself, what is important to me? Has there been a time in my life when something stood out to me that was just really awesome? Or why do I find myself spending a lot of time during the day doing this thing? And what about this thing is really interesting to me? For some, it could be as simple as playing video games. If you play a lot of video games, what about the video games is interesting to you? Is it the fact that they have strong narratives and storytelling? Maybe you're someone who's interested in storytelling. Is it the art and design? Maybe you're someone who's interested in being an artist. There's a million different ways we can approach the things that we're interested in. And even if you have something that you're interested in, your passion could be hidden in that thing. You just don't know it yet. For me, growing up, I always loved video games and stories that involved things like psychology, that involved getting to know the human condition and the inner workings of people's minds and even people's kinds of souls, the more metaphysical, philosophical aspects of psychology, which I also enjoy. You really have to dig down into the things that you enjoy and reflect on what about them is causing you to be interested in them. And is there anything outside of that one interest related to that that could be that passion? One thing that's really important to remember when talking about passions is that not every passion in the world is going to be something that is monetizable. Not every passion is going to be something that you're going to be able to afford to live off of, and that's completely okay. In a perfect world, yes, we'd be able to do whatever we want as our passion and be able to live off of it, but that's not always going to be the case. I know quite a few people who are really, really passionate about fighting games like Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, these sorts of things, and I used to be one of those people myself. I would go to tournaments, but that's not something that most people are going to be able to afford to pay their rent doing. A very, very, very small percentage of people who are passionate about fighting games are going to be able to live off of playing fighting games. So it's completely normal to recognize, hey, I have this part of my life that is to get by and pay my bills, and then I have this thing that I like to do in the other part of my life that is my passion. And yes, in some cases, those things will overlap. In some cases, you will have passions that give you money and you're going to be able to pursue them in such a way that allows you to live. But it's completely okay to have a passion that is not monetizable, whether it's art, music, playing video games, storytelling, writing, drawing, anything of that nature. If it's something that you're passionate about, give yourself time to do it, even if it's something that you know that you can't exactly live off of. Your passion doesn't have to be monetizable. There are two final things I want to talk about when it comes to finding your passion, and I think that these are the most important. The first is to make sure that other people aren't telling you what your passions should be. And what I mean by that is don't let other people define what you need to be passionate about. We all have family members, friends who say, hey, you're good at this. Have you considered doing this? Or, hey, I think that you would enjoy this. Why aren't you doing this? And sometimes they might be right, and usually they're meaning well. But at the end of the day, you have to be the person who decides what you're passionate about. Don't let someone else decide your life for you. You need to be the person that says, this is the thing that I want to be doing, this is what I care about, and this is what I'm passionate about. And finally, the thing that I think is most important when it comes to finding your passion is to not lie to yourself and realize that your passion could be right in front of you right now. It could be something that you're already doing, you just don't think it's something that you should be allowed to be passionate about. Whether it's video games, whether it's art, whether it's music, these are things that you may be truly passionate about, but you think, what if I'm not good enough? What if I can't monetize this? What if I can't pay my bills? And sometimes those are valid questions, but we can't lie to ourselves about the things that we are passionate about. If there is something that you're truly passionate about and you find yourself spending time every single day doing this thing without being told that you need to be doing it, there's a good chance that there's something about that you're passionate about. So look at these things that you're doing daily, that you're doing every single day, and realize, or at least think about the idea that there may be something there that you're passionate about that you've just been lying to yourself about this whole time. And maybe somewhere deep inside that activity, somewhere deep inside that interest is something that you could spend the rest of your life doing if you were honest with yourself. For me, it is partially video games. I've loved video games since I was a kid, and it's always something that I've never really wanted to mix with my psychology world, because when I think of psychology, I think of, professionalism and science and all these things, and then video games are kind of like, not childish, but they're not something in the same field. But then I realized a couple months ago that these things can mix, and they can mix naturally as long as it's something that I am genuinely passionate about. And I think it's no surprise that my recent Elden Ring psychology video is one of my most viewed videos on the entire channel, because it was something that I was genuinely passionate about. It was something that I put a lot of thought, energy, and interest into, and I think people noticed that. And I think that when you put that same energy into your own passions, people are going to notice, and they're going to see that you're passionate about that thing too.